You think you know where your car is? You think you know where your husband is? That's cute. Technology doesn't lie. People do. I bought him a $150,000 Obsidian X1. He thought it was a gift. He was wrong. It was a trap. He used it for his late-night client meetings. He just didn't know every stop at that lake house was recorded, and he definitely didn't know I was sending the trip logs straight to her husband. My name is Maya, by trade. I am a lead engineer at Aperture Dynamics. My world is one of logic, data, and complex systems. If a system has a flaw, I find it. If a code is broken, I fix it. It's a skill set that has provided well for us, affording us a life that looks perfect from the outside. Framed by the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse in Lodo, the view over Denver is sharp, clear, and predictable. Everything in its place. My husband, Liam, is not in the business of predictability. He's in real estate. He operates on charm, potential, and the dizzying highs of deals that are always just about to close. He's handsome, persuasive, and for the past year, struggling. The market turned, and his charisma could only float him for so long. Our 7-year marriage has become a quiet performance, my stability supporting his ambition. I am the breadwinner. He is the dreamer. It's a balance that, until recently, seemed to work. Last quarter, my bonus was astronomical. We weren't just comfortable, we were wealthy. And I wanted to do something tangible with it, something to erase the worry lines I saw deepening around Liam's eyes. I wanted to give him a win. So, I bought him the Obsidian X1. It wasn't just a car. It was a statement. $150,000 of midnight blue, silent electric power, and cutting-edge technology. It was the vehicle he'd been forwarding me articles about for 6 months. When I surprised him with it in our private garage, he was genuinely stunned into silence. The smell of new leather and polished aluminum filled the space. He ran his hand over the console, a seamless piece of dark-grained wood that glowed with ambient light. Maya, he whispered, finally turning to me. He didn't just hug me, he enveloped me, lifting me off the ground. My God, you are my anchor. His voice was thick with emotion. You're the only one who still believes in me, even when I'm failing. You're not failing, Liam. You're just regrouping, I said, smoothing the lapel of his blazer. You deserve this. He laughed, a bright, relieved sound that echoed off the concrete walls. I am going to live in this thing. He was immediately all in, pulling out his phone. Gotta sync up. Get my profile set. He spent the next 20 minutes customizing the seat position, the ambient lighting, and connecting his contacts. The dashboard lit up like a command center, recognizing his voice. He was beaming, looking younger than he had in months. The clients will see this, Maya, and they'll know I'm serious. While he was programming his music, I did my own setup. As the registered owner, I downloaded the Obsidian app to my phone. It was practical. I like practical. It showed me the battery status, service diagnostics, tire pressure, and its real-time GPS location. Liam glanced over and saw the app icon on my screen. He grinned, throwing an arm around my shoulder. What's this you gonna track me, boss? The question was light, a joke, but it landed with a strange weight, a tiny, cold flicker of something. I brushed it off instantly, forcing a smile. Of course not, I said, leaning into his side. I just want to know when you're heading home so I know when to start dinner. Good answer, he said, kissing the top of my head. You're the best, Maya. Really, the best. He drove off then, the car gliding silently out of the garage, its blue-tinted taillights disappearing into the downtown traffic. I stood there for a long time, the app open on my phone, watching the tiny blue dot that was him. That was my gift. Move across the grid of the city. I told myself the unease I felt was just the chill of the garage. The Obsidian X1 was no longer a gift. It was a tool. Liam was in it constantly. His mood was better, lighter, and he was filled with a new, frantic energy. The networking is finally paying off. Maya, he'd say, kissing me on his way out the door. These late meetings are killers, but they're going to make us. 2 weeks passed in this new flurry of activity. My own car, a reliable but aging sedan, was in the shop for its annual service. I had a free afternoon and planned to run some errands, a simple trip for groceries. I figured I would just take the Obsidian. I was in the kitchen, making a list, when I opened the app to check the charge level. The battery was full, but the location ping was wrong. The app showed the SUV parked in Boulder. Liam had mentioned a conference that morning, so it made sense. I sighed, mildly annoyed. I'd have to get a rideshare. I went back to my work, responding to a few emails. An hour later, I was finalizing my grocery list. On a whim, I opened the app again. My thumb hovered over the screen, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. The blue dot was no longer in Boulder. It was now stationary at an address near Evergreen Lake. I knew the area. It was remote, wealthy, and decidedly not on the way back from Boulder. It was, in fact, nearly 40 miles from his supposed conference route. A cold, sharp knot tightened in my stomach. It's a glitch, I told myself. The GPS is lagging, but the data was clear. The car was parked. I hit call. He picked up on the 4th ring. Hey. Can I call you back? I'm slammed. He sounded breathless, hurried, and in the background, very faintly, I could hear music, not conference room music, but something softer, like a piano. I just wanted to check in, I said, my voice carefully casual. How's the conference in Boulder? Long, he said, too quickly. So long. These investors, God, they can talk. The lie was so clean, so immediate. The blue dot on my screen pulsed, mocking me. Oh, that's a shame, I said, the words feeling like ice in my mouth. I'm actually in Boulder myself. Just wrapped up a meeting with a vendor. I could stop by and say hi. Silence. A dead, heavy pause that lasted only a second but felt like a minute. No. The word was explosive. He tried to cover it. I mean, no, hun, don't. We just moved. It's a private location. Super tight security. You know, they're very particular. I'll just call you when I'm done. I'll be late. He hung up before I could say another word. I stood there, phone in hand, the sound of the disconnect echoing in the silent penthouse. My heart wasn't racing. It had gone cold and heavy. I am an engineer. I trust data. My husband was lying. The data was not. I sat down at my desk, pulling the app up on my tablet. I didn't just look at the current location. I opened the trip history tab. My blood ran cold. The blue dot hadn't just gone to Evergreen Lake today. It had been there 12 times in the past 14 days. I clicked on the logs. The timestamps were a punch to the gut. 8 p.m. to 11 p.m., 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. Each trip lasted, on average, 3 to 4 hours. These were the nights he was meeting with contractors, the evenings he was stuck in a late dinner with city planners, the nights he came home smelling faintly of expensive wine and an exhaustion I had mistaken for work. My hands were shaking. I highlighted the address. A single, recurring residential address on a private road overlooking the lake. I copied it. I pasted it into a property search database. The registration was public. The house belonged to Marcus and Serena Holloway. I didn't know Marcus, but I knew Serena. Everyone in Denver's art and social scene knew Serena Holloway. She was a powerful, influential art critic, beautiful, and 10 years younger than her husband. And now, her address was burned into my mind, the epicenter of my husband's lies. I couldn't breathe. The data was irrefutable, and the implication was suffocating. 12 trips. Serena Holloway. The lies. My analytical mind shut down, replaced by a raw, jagged panic. I was drowning, and the view from our penthouse, all that glass and steel and clarity, felt like a lie. I couldn't confront Liam. Not yet. If I was wrong, I would destroy us. If I was right, I needed to know what I was facing. I needed someone I trusted, someone who understood both Liam's world and mine. I called Fiona. Fiona is Liam's older sister, but she had always felt more like mine. She's a razor-sharp financial attorney, the one who had vetted our mortgage, the one I called for career advice. She was family, but more importantly, she was practical. She was the one person who had always been on my side, often taking my part over Liam's in small family disagreements. She was at my apartment within 30 minutes, her expression shifting from professional concern to alarm when she saw my face. "Maya, my God, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't speak. I just opened the tablet and turned it toward her. I showed her the app, the trip history, the 12 logged visits to the Evergreen Lake address, each one corresponding to a lie from Liam. Fiona's reaction was everything I needed it to be. Her face hardened. "Where is this?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "It's registered to a Marcus and Serena Holloway," I whispered, the name feeling toxic on my tongue. Serena Holloway. Fiona's eyes widened, first in recognition, then in a deep, furious understanding. That manipulative. "Maya, I am so sorry." She took my hand, her grip firm. I can't believe this. I'm going to kill him. But first, let me find out who this Marcus is. I have contacts. I'll make a few calls. Don't do anything. Don't talk to Liam. Just wait for me." She left, a whirlwind of righteous anger on my behalf. I clung to that anger. It was a life raft. For the first time in hours, I took a full breath. The next day was torture. I went to the office and stared blankly at schematics, my mind replaying every trip log, every late-night excuse. Fiona called me in the afternoon. "Can I come over? I'm bringing coffee." When I opened the door, the anger was gone from her face. She looked relieved, deeply, profoundly relieved. She was smiling. "Thank God," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Oh, Maya, thank God. It's a huge misunderstanding. But you were right to be suspicious. The optics are terrible." I led her to the couch, my mind blank with confusion. What do you mean?" Fiona sat down. Her entire demeanor changed from the day before. "Okay, first, you can never ever repeat what I'm about to tell you. Do you understand this is massive? It's a life-changing deal for Liam." She leaned forward. "Marcus Holloway. He isn't just wealthy. He's a recluse. He's an eccentric billionaire who invests in high-risk, high-reward property developments. And Liam, Maya, Liam is this close to landing him. We're talking a 9-figure deal, the kind that changes our family's entire future." I was still lost. "But, Serena, the lake house. That's the part Liam got wrong," Fiona said, shaking her head. "Marcus is pathologically private. He's paranoid about security leaks, about his finances, about everything. He demands all his meetings happen at his private residence, the lake house. No phones allowed, no paper trails, nothing. He wants total discretion." She took a breath. "I know this because I helped Liam draft the non-disclosure agreement. It's ironclad. That's why he couldn't tell you. Maya, he was legally bound not to. He was terrified of worrying you or, worse, putting you in legal jeopardy if you knew." The story was intricate. It was specific. It was plausible. "The night you called," Fiona continued, "he was at the lake house, but Serena was there too. She handles all of Marcus's social screening. Liam was frantic. He thought your call, your being in Boulder, was you catching him, and he was terrified you'd show up and blow the whole deal. He was protecting the agreement." Relief washed over me, so total and so overwhelming that I nearly burst into tears. It was followed instantly by a wave of crushing guilt. Fiona saw it. She put her hand on my arm, her voice gentle but firm. Maya, you have to trust him. He is doing this for you, for both of you. He is drowning in the pressure of trying to catch up to you, to give you the life he thinks you deserve. This one deal, it fixes everything for him, but it is hanging by a thread. If you let Marcus think there's a leak, that Liam's own wife is tracking his car, the deal is dead. Liam is ruined. Oh, God, I whispered, burying my face in my hands. God, Fiona, I'm so stupid. You're not stupid, she said, rubbing my back. You're logical. You saw data, and it pointed to a conclusion. You just didn't have all the variables. I looked up, my eyes blurred. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me, she said, smiling kindly. Just let him have this win. Don't mention the app. Don't mention the lake. I nodded, my shame complete. I picked up my phone, my fingers fumbling. I went to the Obsidian app settings and found the notifications tab. I turned them all off. That evening, Liam came home. It was the first time in 2 weeks he was home before sunset. He looked exhausted, but in the way I hadn't seen in a long time, not the brittle stress, but the satisfied fatigue of a problem solved. He was carrying a small, heavy bag from a high-end art gallery downtown. I come bearing gifts, he announced, his smile reaching his eyes. He set the bag on the marble kitchen island. A long day, I asked, my voice softer, guiltier than I intended. The longest. He sighed. But good. Really good. This is for you. He slid the bag toward me. I reached inside and pulled out a heavy object wrapped in tissue paper. It was a bronze sculpture, small but exquisitely detailed, of 2 hands clasped together. It was modern, elegant, and very expensive. Liam, this is a thank you gift, he said, taking it from me and turning it over in his hands. From Marcus Holloway. I mentioned how supportive my wife has been through all this flexibility with my schedule. He appreciates discretion. He said to give this to you as a token of his gratitude. My heart, which had been a cold knot in my chest for days, finally, completely uncoiled. It was physical proof, a tangible object. Fiona was right. Liam was right. I was the one who had been wrong, creating a sordid fantasy out of data points. He shouldn't have, I whispered, relief making me dizzy. Oh, he should have. Liam laughed, pulling me into a hug. Wait until you see the deal this guy is bringing. You earned this, Maya. We both did. That night, he was the old Liam. He insisted on cooking, opening a bottle of our best wine, the kind we saved for anniversaries. We sat at our dining table, the lights of Denver twinkling below, and it felt like we were finally back on solid ground. He talked more about the deal, vaguely, but with more confidence than I'd ever heard. Marcus is tough, he said, swirling his wine. But fair. It's really his wife, Serena, who's the power broker. She's the one who vets everyone. She's got an amazing eye for art, for potential. He gestured to the sculpture, which I'd placed on the table between us. She picked that out, you know. Marcus just signs the checks. She's the one who really runs the show. He said it so casually, so offhandedly, that my last remaining sliver of doubt dissolved. Of course Serena was involved. She was the gatekeeper, the screener for her eccentric husband. I was an idiot. I had almost destroyed my marriage because I couldn't handle not being in the loop for 2 weeks. Later, after dinner, I picked up the sculpture to move it to its permanent place on our fireplace mantel. I felt foolish. Light. I promised myself I would make this up to Liam, that I would trust him more. I set the heavy bronze down on the cool stone of the mantel. As I did, I noticed a tiny speck of dust on the felt base. I picked it up to wipe it clean. I turned it over in my hand. The base was covered in dark green felt, except for one corner. There, a small half-inch scratch cut through the fabric. It was a tiny flaw, barely visible, but it wasn't the scratch that made my hand freeze. It was what was in the scratch, a streak of paint, a deep, metallic, unmistakable color. Obsidian midnight blue, the official, exclusive, custom-ordered color of my husband's new SUV. I stood there, the sculpture feeling suddenly cold and impossibly heavy. My brain, the engineering part of my brain that I had so successfully shut down, clicked back online with terrifying clarity. Why would a bronze sculpture, given to Liam by Marcus Holloway, have a scratch on its base filled with the paint from our car? There was only one way. It had to have been in the car. It must have been sitting on the floor, or the console, and when Liam took a sharp turn, it slid. It scraped against an interior piece of trim, a bolt, something painted with the car's own exterior color, but Liam said Marcus gave it to him. Liam said Serena picked it out. He had carried it into the apartment in a gallery bag, unless he had been lying again. Unless the gift wasn't from Marcus at all. Unless the sculpture had been in the Obsidian X1 for a very different reason, on a trip to a lake house with a passenger who was not me. The fake warmth of our romantic dinner, the buttery softness of the wine, it all curdled into a bitter acid in my stomach. I set the sculpture back on the mantel. The obsidian midnight blue paint, a tiny fleck of truth in a sea of elaborate, well-constructed lies. Fiona's performance, Liam's relief, the story of the eccentric billionaire. It was all gaslighting, a coordinated effort to manage me, the one variable they couldn't control. My guilt didn't just vanish, it inverted, hardening into a cold, diamond-sharp rage. My logic was back. My emotions were gone. I was an engineer again. I went to my office and closed the door. I didn't just open the Obsidian app. I opened my developer console. I had access to the car's full telematics API, a perk of my job, a level of data Liam wouldn't even know existed. I wasn't just looking at the GPS map anymore. I was pulling the raw sensor logs. I wrote a simple script, filtering the data by timestamp. I correlated every single trip to the Evergreen Lake address with the internal cabin sensors, and there it was. The car, like all new high-end vehicles, is equipped with a sophisticated occupant classification system. It's for the airbags. It measures the weight in the passenger seat to determine deployment force. It's not optional. It's always logging. Trip log, date, 8:14 p.m., 11:32 p.m. Location Evergreen Lake. Sensor log, passenger seat status occupied. Sensor log, passenger seat est weight 1 to 28 lbs. Trip log, date 9:02 p.m., 12:47 a.m. Location Evergreen Lake. Sensor log, passenger seat status occupied. Sensor log, passenger seat est weight 126 lbs. I checked all 12 trips. Every single one. A passenger. Every single one. An estimated weight between 120 and 130 pounds. I opened a new tab. I searched for Marcus Holloway Denver. I clicked on images. Public photos from charity galas, from business forums. Marcus Holloway was a tall man, broad-shouldered, easily over 6 feet. He was not, under any circumstances, 130 pounds. But Serena Holloway was, I'd seen her, petite, wiry, the exact build. The story about Marcus was a lie, but the sensor data was physics, and physics never lies. This was no longer a suspicion. This was a fact, proven by my own car. But it wasn't enough. I went deeper. The Obsidian X1 comes with a cloud-connected dashcam, a standard feature. Liam had probably forgotten it was even there. I accessed the cloud storage portal, again using my primary owner credentials. The file list was a graveyard. File deleted by user. File deleted by user. File deleted by user. He was covering his tracks, deleting the footage from every trip. But he was an amateur. He didn't know that deleting a file doesn't erase it, not right away. And he didn't know that sometimes. The sync fails. Tucked in a temporary folder, I found one file. It was small, only 15 seconds, and flagged as File Corrupt Sync Error. It was from 3 days ago, from the parking lot of a restaurant I didn't recognize. I downloaded it. The video was unusable, just a mess of green and gray pixels. But the audio was there. I ran it through a simple filter to clean up the static. I put on my headphones and pressed play. A woman's voice, light and smooth. "Serena, you told her it was Marcus. You're brilliant." Then Liam's voice, my husband's voice, and he wasn't stressed. He was confident. He was laughing. "She trusts Fiona more than she trusts me. Just keep Marcus busy with that business trip to Chicago, and we'll have the transfer done before he even notices." I stopped the recording. I played it again. And again. "She trusts Fiona more than she trusts me." Fiona, his sister, my confidant. The righteous anger. The thank God. It's a misunderstanding. She wasn't just covering for him. She was an active participant. This wasn't just an affair. An affair is about sex, about emotion, about a broken heart. This was cold. This was a transfer. This was a financial conspiracy. They were using my gift, the car I paid for, as the vehicle for a crime. And his sister, the lawyer, was the architect. I took off my headphones. The silence of the penthouse was absolute. The sculpture on the mantel caught the light, the two bronze hands clasped together, not in gratitude, in conspiracy. My heartbreak was gone. It had been replaced by the clean, cold thrill of a problem I was uniquely qualified to solve. The nausea was immediate, a visceral, physical rejection of the truth. I gripped the sides of my desk, the cold metal biting into my palms. The penthouse, my home, suddenly felt like a stage, a meticulously designed set for a play I had unknowingly been the star of. But the sickness was fleeting. It was a human response. And the part of me that was human, the wife, was offline. The part that was left was the engineer. The anger that rose up wasn't hot. It was cold, precise, and computational. It was the anger of discovering a fatal flaw in a system, a critical breach. Liam, Serena, and Fiona. They were a conspiracy. They had analyzed my weaknesses, my trust in Fiona, my love for Liam, my logical nature that would accept a plausible explanation, and they had exploited them. But they had made a mistake. They had left a trail. They had used my technology, my gift, as their instrument, and they had, in doing so, given me the very data I needed to destroy them. I couldn't do it alone. A financial conspiracy with a lawyer involved was too complex. I was the data expert, but I needed the asset holder. I needed the other victim. I needed Marcus Holloway. Approaching him was a problem. I had to assume Serena monitored his calls, his emails, his life. I couldn't contact him as Maya. I had to create a new variable. I drove to a public library on the other side of town. From a hardwired public terminal, I created a new, encrypted email address. I sent the message to the general inquiry address for Marcus Holloway's philanthropic foundation, a place Serena would be unlikely to monitor. The subject was sterile security advisory, personal asset irregularity. The message was brief. "I am a private consultant. I have discovered a significant active internal breach concerning your personal finances. This is not a solicitation. This is evidence. If you wish to see it, be at the Corner Nook Cafe on Larimer Street tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. Do not speak of this to your wife." It was a gamble. It sounded like blackmail. He might send a lawyer. He might send security. Or he might just ignore it. I was betting that a man like him, a man so paranoid about privacy, couldn't ignore the word internal. The next day, I was there at 1:30. The cafe was a small, quiet place, smelling of old books and coffee. I chose a booth in the darkest corner, one that gave me a clear view of the door. I had the 15-second audio file loaded onto a cheap, disposable phone. At exactly 2 o'clock, he walked in. He looked older than his pictures, gaunt and exhausted. The power I expected from a billionaire wasn't there. He just looked tired, a man carrying an invisible, crushing weight. He scanned the room, his eyes sharp and analytical. He saw me, the only person in the room alone, and walked over. He slid into the booth without a word. He stared at me for several seconds. "I assume," he said, his voice a low, gravelly monotone, "that this is the part where you tell me how much you want. So let's get it over with. What's the price?" He thought I was a blackmailer. Good. I didn't answer. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't offer to buy him a coffee. I simply reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the cheap plastic phone, and set it on the table between us. His eyes narrowed, tracking the object. I pressed the small play button. The tiny speaker crackled, but the voices were clear. "Serena, you told her it was Marcus, you're brilliant. Liam, she trusts Fiona more than she trusts me. Just keep Marcus busy with that business trip to Chicago, and we'll have the transfer done before he even notices." I watched his face. The transformation was terrifying. The bored, cynical skepticism didn't just fade, it collapsed. The color drained from his face, leaving a sickly, pale sheen. The exhaustion in his eyes was replaced by a sudden, dawning horror. He looked from the phone to my face. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I'm the wife of the man who's laughing," I said. "I'm the one who trusts Fiona." He was silent for a full minute, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "The Chicago trip," he said, the words sounding hollow. I'm supposed to fly out on Friday." He looked up at me, his eyes desperate, finally understanding he wasn't being blackmailed, he was being rescued. "Serena," he said, She convinced me months ago to move a large portion of my assets into a new private art investment fund. She said it was a tax strategy, a way to protect us. The Chicago trip was to meet the new fund managers, to finalize the agreement. I leaned forward, the last brutal piece of the puzzle falling into place. "There is no meeting, Marcus," I said, my voice as cold and flat as the data on my screen. "There is no fund. They're not fund managers, they're thieves. They don't want you to finalize the deal. They want you out of the city so they can drain the account. They are stealing everything." We left the cafe. The alliance was silent, absolute. We moved to a secure location, not his home, but a sterile, high-rise office he kept under a different name, a place he said Serena knew nothing about. It was a fortress of glass and steel, impersonal and perfect. The heartbreak was gone, replaced by the clean, cold hum of a complex problem. We were two specialists, pooling our resources. His resource was access. Mine was analysis. "She called it the Ares Art Fund," Marcus said, his voice flat. He unlocked a digital vault on his terminal, his hands moving with the precise, tired motions of a man who had done this 1,000 times. A folder populated with documents, prospectuses, incorporation papers, transfer agreements. She said it was diversified, mostly post-war moderns, liquid but discreet. "It's not about the art," I said, plugging in a secure drive. "It's about the plumbing." He sent me the files. I spent the next 2 hours in a state of pure, cold focus. I wasn't a financial lawyer, but I am a systems engineer. I don't look at the surface, I look at the architecture. I trace the lines of connection. The documents were slick, professional, full of comforting legal jargon. But I ignored the prose. I went for the registration numbers. The Ares Art Fund was a subsidiary. I followed its ownership. It was owned by a holding company based in the Cayman Islands, a classic shell. It was so generic it was almost an insult. I ran the shell company's name. It was legal. It was registered. I dug deeper, pulling incorporation records. Someone had to sign for it. A legal representative. The digital signature was clean. The name was one I would never forget. Fiona Hall. Esque. "There," I said, turning the screen to Marcus, the legal architect. He just nodded, his jaw tight. "Fiona Hall, Liam's sister, the lawyer." "It's a 3-person team," I said, mapping it out on a whiteboard, the logic flowing. "One Serena. She's the inside man. She provides the emotional access, the trust, and the social cover. She identifies the target, and the target is you. To Fiona. She's the legal firewall. She builds the maze, creates the shell companies, and drafts the non-disclosure agreements that make it all look legitimate. She makes it legal. I paused and tapped the center of the board. And 3 Liam, my husband. He's the exit. Marcus looked confused. The exit? I thought he was just the lover. No, I said, pulling up another set of files. These were the fund's acquisitions. They're using your money from the fund. Fiona's company invests it. What is it investing in? I pointed to a line item, a $20 million purchase of a commercial property in the Denver suburbs. I had already run the address. This property doesn't exist. The county assessor has it listed as an undeveloped lot. But the seller does. I brought up the seller, Lodo Development Partners, LLC. Liam's company, Marcus whispered, the realization dawning. A ghost company he registered 6 months ago. I confirmed. The plan is simple. Serena gets you to move. Say, $50 million into the fund. Fiona's shell company takes that $50 million and buys a non-existent building from Liam's ghost company. The money is now laundered. It's no longer your asset. It's Liam's legitimate profit from a real estate deal. They clean it, split it, and dissolve the companies. You're left holding a portfolio of worthless art and fake buildings. He was pale, but his eyes were hard. They're not just stealing it. They're converting it. Yes, but that's not the worst part. I'd found something else. A second phase. While digging through the heirs fund documents, I saw a few smaller, anomalous transactions, transfers that Serena had him authorize separately. To cover administrative fees, she had said. These fees, I said, highlighting them. They're not going to Fiona's firm. They're structured, small-dollar wire transfers to a series of unverified accounts in Eastern Europe. They look like kickbacks. They are designed to look like a crime. Marcus stared at the screen, and I saw the final, horrifying piece click into place for him. This, I said, tapping the screen, is phase 2, after they've drained the fund, after Liam and Serena are gone. This is what they leave behind. They're not just running. They're framing you. He understood. They'll leak it. They'll report me. Of course. Serena will be the terrified wife who discovered her husband's crimes. Liam will be the innocent developer who got conned by you. They'll use these transfers as proof. They'll plant more. They'll testify that the whole Ares Art Fund was your idea, a complex scheme to launder your own money, and they were just pawns. They're not just leaving you broke. Marcus, they're planning to leave you in a federal prison. The office was quiet. The only sound the click of my keyboard. We had the what the shell companies, the ghost properties, the frame-up. We had the how the transfers, the legal entities, the lies. Now, we needed the win. We needed the final irrefutable proof of them executing the transfer. Something that tied Liam and Serena together, in the act, at the bank. We needed to give the FBI the whole package. They're too smart to talk about this on the phone, Marcus said, his voice a low rumble. He was pacing by the window. And Fiona's scrubbed every document. It's my word against theirs, unless we catch them. So we let them play the game, I said, not looking up from my screen. We just changed the ending. The plan was simple. We would give them exactly what they wanted, an empty stage. The next morning, Marcus left. He went to the airport, checked in for his flight to Chicago, and even passed through security. He had a private security contact who met him on the other side. He walked out of a side exit and was driven back to a different secure location. To the airline, to Serena, to anyone watching. He was in the air. My own departure was just as public. I packed a carry-on bag in front of Liam, my brow furrowed, my phone pressed to my ear. I was staging a series of loud, frantic calls with my team at Aperture Dynamics. No, the whole Seattle server farm can't be down, I said, zipping the bag with a sharp, angry tug. I'm on my way. I'll be on the next flight out. Liam was practically vibrating with excitement. He tried to hide it. Of course. He feigned sympathy. Oh, Maya, that's terrible. A server crisis that sounds awful. He put his hands on my shoulders, his eyes gleaming. You're sure you have to go? I'm the only one with the root keys for that system. I lied. I have to. I'll be gone for at least 48 hours. Maybe more. Don't wait up. He kissed me at the door. It felt like pressing my lips against cold glass. Be safe, he said, his voice dripping with false concern. You too, I replied. I drove to the Denver airport, parked my own car in long-term parking, and walked into the terminal. I sat in a coffee shop until my flight would have departed. Then, like Marcus, I left, taking a rideshare to the high-rise office where this all ended. Liam and Serena were now completely alone. Their spouses were gone. The stage was set. They thought they had a 2-day window. They had 48 hours to execute the final massive wire transfer that would drain Marcus's fund and make them rich. Now, for my final move. The bait. I sat at the clean desk in Marcus's anonymous office. I picked up my phone, but I didn't call the FBI. Not yet. I called Obsidian Financial Services, the lender for the SUV. My name, and only my name, was on the loan. Obsidian Financial, this is Sarah, a polite voice answered. Hello, Sarah, I said, my voice steady, professional. My name is Maya. I have a loan agreement with you for an Obsidian X1. I'm calling to report a potential security issue. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What seems to be the problem? I have reason to believe my bank account, the one used for my automatic payments, may have been compromised. I'm placing a temporary freeze on it. The next payment for the vehicle is due tomorrow. Correct? Yes, ma'am. I see that. A payment of $2,500 is scheduled for tomorrow. Good, I said. It's imperative that you do not try to run that payment. It will be declined. I'm in the middle of a fraud investigation. What I need from you is to put a note on the account. If that payment is missed, I authorize an immediate recovery of the asset. A repossession. There was a pause. Ma'am, a repossession. We usually wait 90 days. I am not a normal case. I interrupted, my voice hardening slightly. I am an engineer. I work in cybersecurity. I am telling you my identity has been compromised and that vehicle may be involved. If the payment fails tomorrow, I want the vehicle immobilized and recovered immediately. I am the sole owner. I am waiving the grace period. Can you note that in my file, the woman was typing, the clicks audible. Yes, I've never had a request like this, but yes, I am noting it. At owner's request, immediate recovery upon default. It's flagged. Thank you, Sarah, you've been very helpful. I hung up the phone. I then logged into my bank account and canceled the pending transfer to Obsidian Financial. The payment would fail. The trap was set. Liam, so focused on stealing $50 million, would never ever think to check if I'd made a $2,000 car payment. His arrogance was the variable I was counting on. He and Serena would use my car, the one I paid for, to drive to their bank, to drive to their celebrations, believing they were untouchable. They were about to commit a massive felony, and they were going to do it in a vehicle that was, as of tomorrow, officially stolen. The next morning was a symphony of controlled chaos. Marcus and I were in the high-rise office, which had a direct, clear view of the private bank building 3 blocks away. We had a direct audio feed from an FBI surveillance team, a team Marcus had brought in at dawn. They were parked, waiting. I wasn't watching the street. I was watching my laptop. I had the Obsidian app open. At 9:05 a.m. The missed payment alert flashed red. At 9:06, a notification from Obsidian Financial repossession order issued. At 9:07, I forwarded that order to a heavy-haul towing company I had already vetted and placed on standby. I told them the vehicle was at a specific address in Lodo, our penthouse, but I knew it wouldn't be there for long. At 10:32 a.m., the blue dot on my screen started to move. They're on the move, I said to Marcus, my voice flat. We watched the dot glide silently through the streets of downtown Denver. It was moving toward the bank, toward the wire transfer, toward the end. "He's driving my car," I said, almost to myself. "He's driving a $150,000 car that I paid for to go steal $50 million, and he's going to get caught because he didn't pay a $2,000 installment." Marcus didn't smile. He just continued to watch the street. The Obsidian X1 pulled up in front of the bank. It was a beautiful car, sleek and midnight blue, and it looked absurdly out of place when Liam parked it directly in the red-painted fire lane, right under a no parking sign. Their arrogance was breathtaking. A moment later, Liam and Serena got out. He, in a crisp suit, she, in a sharp white dress. They looked like a power couple. They were laughing as they walked into the bank, arm in arm. "They're inside," Marcus said, speaking into his phone. "They're in. Send it." "Heads up," I said, my own phone to my ear, talking to the tow truck dispatcher. "The vehicle is no longer at the primary address. It is now at 1620 Welton Street. It is parked illegally in a fire lane. You have the legal repo order. Get it now." The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. Liam and Serena were inside, signing the papers, authorizing the transfer, destroying Marcus's life, and building their own. Then, around the corner, came the truck. It wasn't a standard tow truck. It was a heavy-duty flatbed, the kind you use for high-value assets. It maneuvered into position, its lights flashing. The driver, a big man in overalls, got out, clipboard in hand, and began to work. He was efficient, attaching the recovery chains, the entire process clean and professional. At 10:58 a.m., the main doors of the bank opened. Liam and Serena walked out, their heads together, laughing. Serena tucked her phone into her purse, a satisfied, cat-like smile on her face. The transfer was done. They were rich. They had won. They took 2 steps toward the fire lane and froze. The Obsidian X1 was no longer on the ground. It was 3 feet in the air, tilting as the flatbed's winch pulled it up. The sound Liam made was not a word. It was a raw, strangled cry of pure panic. "Hey, hey, what are you doing? That's my car! That's my car!" He sprinted toward the truck, Serena a few steps behind him, her face a mask of confusion. The driver didn't even flinch. He just held up a hand. "Can't help you, sir. It's on the order." "What order?" "There's a mistake." Liam was frantic, clawing at his pockets for his keys, as if jangling them would make the car come down. This is my car. You can't take it." "Don't know what to tell you," the driver said, checking a strap. "Payment was missed. The bank issued a repo order. We've been authorized to recover the asset." "Payment? What payment?" Liam looked genuinely confused. The tiny $2,000 payment had been completely invisible to him in the shadow of his $50 million crime. "It doesn't matter," Serena snapped, recovering first. "We'll pay it right now. We'll pay cash. Put the car down." "Can't do that, ma'am," the driver said, shaking his head. "It's in the system. Once it's hooked, it's hooked. You gotta talk to the finance company." "I am going to sue you," Liam screamed, his face turning a blotchy red. "I am going to destroy your company." The driver finally stopped his work and turned, a look of profound boredom on his face. He sighed. "Sir," the driver said, "I'm just doing my job. Your problem isn't with me." He lifted a thick arm and pointed across the street. "Your problem is with him." Liam and Serena turned. Standing on the opposite curb, flanked by 2 men in dark suits, was Marcus Holloway. Liam's face was not just pale, it was the color of ash. He stared at Marcus, his mind clearly failing to reconcile the man who was supposed to be in Chicago with the man standing on a Denver curb. "You," Liam stammered, his voice a dry croak. You're in Chicago." "I cut the trip short," Marcus said. His voice was flat, carrying across the street with the finality of a judge's gavel. That was when the panic truly set in. The realization hit them both at the same time. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a bank error. This was a setup. Serena's eyes, moments ago bright with success, darted wildly, scanning the street, her mind finally connecting the tow truck, the husband, and the trap. Liam, slower, devolved into a pathetic, desperate rage. He pointed a shaking finger at the tow truck, which was now settling the obsidian onto its flatbed. "You can't take that car. It's mine." "No." The word came from behind them, quiet, clear, and cold. Liam and Serena spun around. I stepped away from the alcove of a nearby building, my arms crossed. "It's not yours, Liam," I said, walking toward them. "It never was. It's mine. My name is on the loan. My name is on the title." And I stopped the payments. Serena's face, a mask of confused hatred, locked onto mine. She saw Marcus. She saw me. She finally understood. The tech-savvy wife. The data. The app. "You," she hissed, the word a blade of pure venom. "You." She never finished the sentence. At that moment, 2 black sedans glided to a stop, flanking the tow truck, boxing them in. They didn't use sirens. They didn't need them. Doors opened, and 4 men in dark suits stepped out onto the sidewalk. "Liam Hall, Serena Holloway," the lead agent said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. Liam and Serena stumbled back, their bodies hitting the cold glass of the bank. But as the agents approached, I watched Marcus. His gaze wasn't on the 2 thieves. He was staring at the second sedan, and the paleness I'd seen on his face when he heard the audio file returned, a look of profound shock and disgust. He wasn't just pale at the arrival of the FBI. He was pale at who had arrived with them. The back door of the second car opened, and a woman stepped out, poised, calm, and immaculate in a gray suit. She was flanked by a man holding a briefcase. It was Fiona. Liam's terror fractured, replaced by a momentary, insane flicker of hope. "Fiona, thank God," he cried, taking a step toward her. Tell them there's been a mistake. Tell these people what's happening." Fiona Hall did not look at her brother. She looked only at the lead agent, her expression one of cold, professional cooperation. This was the final, brutal move on the chessboard, the one I hadn't seen coming. Fiona, the lawyer, realizing the game was over, had analyzed the inevitable collapse and had made a calculated decision. She had chosen her side herself. 1 hour before, while Liam and Serena were driving to the bank, Fiona Hall had walked into the federal building with her own attorney. She handed them everything: the hard drives, the offshore account numbers, the encrypted communication logs. She delivered a full confession, painting herself as a legal mind coerced under pressure, an accomplice terrified of her brother's unstable partner. She had given the FBI an airtight case on a silver platter in exchange for a full immunity deal. She had sold out her own brother to save her law license. "Liam Hall, Serena Holloway," the agent said, pulling out the handcuffs. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering." The click of the metal cuffs locking was the loudest sound on the street. Liam's face crumbled. He looked from the agents to his sister, his expression not one of anger, but of a small, confused child. "Fiona," he whispered. "Why?" Fiona finally met his gaze. Her eyes were like ice. She simply adjusted the sleeve of her blazer, already moving on. Serena was silent, rigid with a hatred that was almost terrifying. Liam just looked broken. The agents led them to the sedans, their high-stakes power play ending in a walk of shame on a downtown sidewalk. I stood there, saying nothing. Marcus gave me a single grim nod. The tow truck driver, finished with his work, got into his cab. With a low hydraulic groan, the flatbed leveled out. He started the engine, and my car, my $150,000 trap, the physical evidence of their entire sordid affair, was pulled out into the afternoon traffic and towed away. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to connect with all of you, So please comment below and let me know where you're listening from and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear it.